Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to have you on for our February 21st or 24th, 2020 webinar for educators. My name is Hillary Hunt. I serve as the director of the Making Sense Project, and we have a great webinar in store for you this afternoon. We are excited to have representatives from both Intuit and Take Charge Today with us to talk about how you can use Mint and TurboTax simulations along with lesson plans from Take Charge Today in your classroom. So very excited to share these relatively new resources with everybody today. Just a few things as background before we get started. The Making Sense Project is, as many of you are aware, a partnership between the Pennsylvania Department of Education and Penn State University. And these webinars are just one part of a series of financial literacy and economic education initiatives that we offer. If you haven't had a chance to check out or visit our website, I invite you to do so at makingsensepa.org. These webinars that we offer during the school year are designed usually for one or more of three sort of goals. One is to enhance content knowledge. The second is to highlight financial literacy resources. And finally, to share professional information. On today's webinars, we're really focusing in on that centerpiece, highlighting financial literacy resources that I think many of you will be able to put into practice or put into use in your classroom right away, perhaps as soon as tomorrow. I'd invite all of you to find the chat area. That is where we are. I'd like to invite you to offer an introduction, your name, where you're from, the grade level, subject area that you teach, as well as your district. And it always helps me to locate folks if you could provide a county or a nearby city. I'm afraid no matter the number of decades I've been in Pennsylvania, I still don't have all 500 school districts memorized with where folks are. And then finally, what do you do with financial education? Do you teach a course? Do you have a unit or just do a couple of lessons, or you're interested in learning more and haven't quite taken a deep dive in yet? Just helpful to get some information there. You're welcome when you use the chat to send those introductions and or your questions and comments later on, either to all panelists and attendees or just to the panelists. There's a little drop down that you'll notice in that area. There's also a Q&A function. We'll be monitoring both of those. So at any point during the webinar, if you have any questions, put them either in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll be taking a look and keeping an eye on both sections. So look forward to everybody offering their introductions. And with that, I would like to welcome aboard both Lisa Bender and Jared Davidov. Lisa is with Take Charge Today, and Jared is with Intuit, and they are going to share with us the simulations that Intuit has that are available for educators to use with students, along with some great accompanying lesson plans. So Lisa, I think you're kicking things off, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and send things over to you.
Well, thanks, and welcome everyone. It's great to be with all of you, educators and our friends in Pennsylvania. And we are thrilled that we can join you this afternoon and a new group of educators this evening. We'll be talking to you a little bit about Take Charge Today's financial curriculum and how we've worked over the last year with some really nice people at Intuit Education, creating some hands-on ideas and things to do for students in your classroom. As Hillary said, my name is Lisa Bender and I work with Take Charge Today. And in a little bit, you'll be hearing from Jared Davidov as he walks you through some of those exciting new lessons that we have in store for you. So here's what our agenda will look like. I'm just going to be talking for the first 10 minutes or so to make sure that you're familiar with Take Charge and to also just show you where you can find some of these new and exciting simulations directly from our website. And then Jared's going to take it over and give you an overview of Intuit Ed and also TurboTax and Mint simulations. Then we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. We'd also like to share with you some good news that someone on this call that's live in attending today will be chosen to receive a $50 gift card from courtesy of our friends at Intuit Education. So thanks a lot, Jared. These are some of the objectives. If you need this for any of your Pennsylvania professional development hours, you can come back to this slide and see what our goals are for the purpose of this webinar. Some of you may be brand new to Take Charge and you don't currently have a Take Charge Today user account. That's not a problem. We want to encourage you to watch as we are showing you some of these really cool simulations and some of our lessons that align with these new offerings. And then at the end, you can go ahead, if you've not become a user of our curriculum, you can make a new user account. And myself and my colleague out at the University of Arizona, Tiffany, will be approving accounts in real time, and you can go in there and see if you can find what you're looking for that we've talked to you about today. So I think we're ready to get started. What you're looking at right now is just a zoomed in version of Take Charge Today's homepage. And I wanted to put this up here so that you would know what to look for as a new user of our curriculum. And as you can see in the upper right hand of the page, this is where you will be putting in a password and a username to get into our curriculum. We have more than 100 lessons about personal finance education for high school students and more than 75 dedicated lessons to middle school students for financial education. And in each lesson, we kind of put it into 5 frameworks. We have vocabulary activities that you can choose from surrounded about that content. We have anticipatory set options, or the hook that you might want to use to get your students interested in the particular topic that you'll be teaching them about. Then the recommended facilitation, we offer a PowerPoint, we offer note-taking guides, we offer information sheets that reflect or mirror what's in the PowerPoint. So you can choose how you want to deliver the nuts and bolts, meat and potatoes, whatever you want to call it, the core content of the topic that you're teaching them. We offer conclusion options. These are typically activity-based. We offer assessment options, your traditional multiple choice tests if you like that. We offer reinforcement worksheets to review content students just learned. You could use those as quizzes. And we offer project-based assessments. So there's a variety of ways that you can choose to use what works best and make the curriculum your own. That's what we want you to do, because you guys know exactly what works best for the students in front of you in your classroom. Under each of those pieces of framework in a Take Charge Today lesson, you might see worksheets, you might see apps, you might see games for vocabulary, or games or video links, or other activities for ways to get them hooked on the subject of credit or savings. As I mentioned before, the 3 different note-taking guides, the conclusion options, and the assessments. So that's just a little bit more way to view what we're offering to you in this free curriculum. We have our lessons put into a framework around themed units of study. And under each of these themes, there are many, many different lessons. The ones in green above are the ones that, some lessons in these themed units of study that we've put into our Mint simulations. And the red earning unit of study is where you'll find a specific lesson that's tied to paying your income taxes and perfectly aligned to use the new TurboTax simulation. I mentioned the paying your income taxes, and that's exactly a perfect lesson that from Take Charge Today that introduces your students to so many different facets about paying your income taxes. This is a screenshot of what the PowerPoint slide will look like that you could use with your students when teaching this lesson. As a hook for this lesson, we have Attitudes About Money, which is an active learning tool. It's a great way to get kids to start thinking about the topic of taxes, and it's very easy to find by going to www.takechargetoday.arizona.edu. That's where you will create your new user account or access your current Take Charge Today account, and then you can find lessons like this, activities like this to put into use in your classroom. Specifically from the Paying Your Income Taxes worksheet, lesson plan, here's a screenshot of an individual activity that you could have your students do, or you could even take the same idea and turn it into a group activity. We give you options to do one or the other, or even both if you wanted. And all the directions are written by educators for educators so that you can feel confident about what you are getting ready to deliver in your classroom, because these lessons have been written by educators and tested in the classroom by educators before we release them publicly to educators across the country. Now, let's say you're interested in using Intuit's popular Mint app that so many Americans as adults are using. With Take Charge Today, we worked with Intuit Education to bring about, align several of these lessons to go with new simulations using the Mint app, and you can see those here. How could you find the Intuit simulations on Take Charge Today's website? Well, we've got several different options for you. So let's take a look. Here on the front page, I've done a screenshot of what you would see as you have just been, got your account open and taking you to the home page. You could very easily hit the tab at the top for curriculum, and as you can see, we have Intuit simulations as a tab that you could click on the drop-down. We also have included links to our Mint or TurboTax simulations in each part of the teacher's lesson plan guide. And you can see here, for instance, I'm showing you TurboTax, and there is the link. As you can see, there's lots of other links we include in each of our lessons as well. You could also find the Intuit simulation links if we have one aligned with a lesson under the actual lesson plan, and here we're showing it under assessment options. So you can read about it here in the directions for the teacher, and over here in the gray shaded area on the right, we always put tips and specific ideas for teachers that we feel deserve a shout out. So you can see something here that we put into our lessons to let teachers know this past year, 2019, October 15th through December 3rd, that's when the IRS and TurboTax update their websites. So teachers were encouraged not to use that lesson at that time. So what I'm going to do right now is let Jared take off the rest of the time, because we really want you to hear from Jared about these new simulations and how engaging they are for your students. And Jared, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and let you take over, and then I'll swing back in at the very end.
My name is Jared Davidov. I am the Senior Manager of Strategic Education Partnerships at Intuit, or I am our Financial Readiness Leader, which basically means anything regarding financial literacy, financial readiness, financial empowerment, working with educators and students, it runs through my team. And so this is some of the people that are on my team. If you reach out to us, they are not on this call. One or two of them may be, but I'm not 100% sure. But Ryan leads our go-to-market team. Emily and Josh kind of have segregated from whether you're in post-secondary or K through 12. Victoria works with me and kind of runs with our partnerships with Take Charge Today, CEE, the Council for Economic Education, and so on and so forth. And then David Cook in the bottom right corner is an educator that we work with who kind of helps us kind of stay in tune with the classroom and kind of build out some of the curriculum that you guys will have seen or will potentially have used. So usually this goes a little bit better when we have webcams on or it's in person, but for those of you who don't know who Intuit is, you may, if you Googled us just before this call, or you're familiar with TurboTax, that's usually when people kind of really are like, oh yeah, okay, now I know who Intuit is. Some of our main products that you might most be familiar with is obviously TurboTax, QuickBooks for small businesses and entrepreneurs, and then Mint for personal finance. And then we have other software out there as well for accountants and other sort of areas that you may or may not be as familiar with. We are in 140 countries around the globe. And I want to say, if you add up, I can't remember the exact total number of customers that we work with providing kind of financial well-being. I want to say it's a little bit more than what you see here, but I think it's like just shy of the 90 million number. Intuit Education started its journey probably about maybe 3 years ago. And we really had a heavy focus on QuickBooks and accounting for post-secondary education. And then we kind of we took a hard look in the mirror and wanted to say, well, is there something more that we can be doing? And so when you think about the term education, depending on who you ask, you'll get a bunch of different meanings. And so what we did was, we're really big believers in what we call design thinking, or our version, Design for Delight. And what that really means is falling in love with the problem and not the solution. So not necessarily saying, oh, our tools are the best way to do this, or this is how we think we should do this, because we're not educators. And so what we did with Take Charge and some of the other partners and with the schools and educators is we actually sat in on classrooms and wanted to understand, what does education mean to you guys, and how can we use our expertise in the financial well-being world to bring something to you and your students. And so that's kind of where our mission now, powering future prosperity for those who need it most, kind of really came about with bringing Mint and TurboTax to the classroom. And so kind of thinking about, going into the classroom and kind of where we built the simulations that you guys can use. I'll give you a quick example. I went and sat in on a class. This was maybe about 16 or 18 months ago now. And I wanted to just kind of see how they taught taxes. Just kind of wanted to see what the problem was, how the students were learning. And then I kind of did, one class, a second, a third, and a fourth. And I very quickly learned that a lot of students were learning taxes, number one, by pen and paper, which kind of actually surprised me. And then number two, a common theme that I saw was the 1040 easy form. So for those of you that aren't aware, fun fact, you can't actually use the 1040 easy form to file taxes anymore. So the students are learning on kind of what's really irrelevant to them, because odds are they're not going to do taxes by pen and paper. Every once in a while, you may find one or two people, but I'd say it's very few and far between. And then number two, they're learning on a 1040 easy form, which they can't do. So what we did was we kind of built these simulations with Take Charge Today, and we said, okay, let's bring it to the classroom. And so here's some pictures that you can see. So in the upper left corner, you see teachers originally going through the activity. And then in the middle and then on the right, you see more students actually piloting the activity as well. So as we kind of were building these out, we said, okay, well, what works, what doesn't work, and how can we fix it? So a lot of the curriculum that we actually have that you will go through is really very similar to Take Charge. It's built by educators, for educators, and students as well. And so we went through, I don't really exactly recall how long of kind of a piloting testing, but this was the first year that we launched these simulations for students. And we have over 60,000 students using Mint today to learn personal finance, whether it's from budgeting, whether it's comparing credit cards or understanding credit scores. And what we did was we took those learnings to kind of really apply it to that falling in love with the problem that we kept hearing about. And I actually noticed this in a comment or in the chat box right before we started was, students can learn by Excel, students can learn by pen and paper, but really where Intuit and we kind of excel in what we want to help bring to the classroom is what you would call real world technology or project-based learning. Is students are going into a tool that's tangible for them, that's relevant to them, that they can actually go, and if they have a part-time job, they can do it themselves today. And we're really meeting students where they are, right? So if you think about where do students kind of live, probably, I don't want to say 50% of the time because that sounds like a lot, but they live in their cell phones. And a lot of this can be done, whether it's through your cell phone or on the computer, it's really done through technology. And so going through the first part of the surveys when we really started this, 90% of the students, this was one thing we wanted to solve for, they felt more confident in managing their personal finances after going through a Mint simulation. 81% of the students said that they actually wanted to go home and discuss how their parents build a budget or how they do taxes. And then last but not least, 96% of students said that they had wished that this would be part of their curriculum. And then, so obviously, it's one thing to hear me talk about it, but here's a couple comments from students. I think the one thing that stands out most to me is I love taxes. Is that weird? Because typically on tax day, around the April timeframe, everyone's kind of like, and parents specifically are, all right, got to do my taxes. You kind of really feel that kind of emotion in April. And so what we have, I'm going to just give you a quick high level of this Mint and then kind of the similars, and then I'm actually going to go into the tools and show you the simulations. So again, what we did was we would keep going back into the classroom to understand how do we make this work and how do we make it easy for you guys to be able to understand and teach it, because real world technology and teaching in the classroom might not be the easiest thing to do. And so what we want to do is create step-by-step guides to help you go through it. And so on the left-hand side, you'll see a teacher checklist, which basically says, do these several things, really setting up your account, and then you're kind of have the ability to go off and running, and I'll walk you through that in a little bit more detail. We have a step-by-step guide in the middle, which is taking you literally step-by-step. Part 1, signing in, 2, adding your email, 3, number, the whole 9 yards. And then on the right-hand side, we have what a W-2 might look like. So we have W-2s ranging from part-time high school students, college students, recent grads, a married couple, and I believe there's 1 or 2 more. And Tiffany, if you just want to mention those in the chat, you are more than welcome. And again, I will go through these 3 in a little bit more detail. And then we have Mint. So for those of you who you're probably more familiar with TurboTax, for those of you who aren't familiar with Mint, what it is it's your fictional financial life in one place that's easy for students to understand. So now how do I relate it to you guys so you understand? Imagine you probably maybe bank with Chase, you probably have a credit union, maybe you have a credit card with somebody else. What it does is you essentially connect your accounts, and then it has the ability to pull everything up for you in one location. And how it works for the students is we have something what we call the Bank of Intuit, where students have student loans, they have a car, they have a checking and a savings account, and it's all fictional data. So it's not really them inputting their own personal information. It's connecting to a fake fictional data source. We call it the Bank of Intuit. And we tried to recreate what someone's life might be like. So for example, Scott, he has a coffee problem. And he goes to the Java shop maybe every other day. And so one of the activities is to go ahead and kind of help him build his budget. So on top of that, it also helps you set life goals. You can track bills, understanding credit scores. Mint has the ability to do investment tracking and then analyze and develop kind of spending behaviors. And so that's really where the tool excels, and what differentiates itself from curriculum itself is that it's kind of creating that behavioral change and that aspect of learning early on. And then so similar to what you guys saw for TurboTax, we have the same thing for Mint. So teacher checklist, step-by-step guide, and an intro simulation. And I'm not going to go too much into this just because I want to be able to get into the tools. I'm going to end the PowerPoint presentation really quickly, and then I'm going to share with you my screen. So there's a couple things that you might be able to see. So on the left-hand side is the Take Charge Today website, and then on the right-hand side is Mint. So what I'm going to pull up is, so you'll see a teacher checklist, and so what this teacher checklist does is, I've already actually signed it here. I can do this really quickly, so it'll take 2 seconds. So what it does is it's action steps to basically creating an account, connecting you to the Bank of Intuit, and then connecting your credit score, basically kind of building that fictional life for what you can show your students. So I'm going to do this really quickly. I already have an account just so I can show you guys what the tool looks like. So once you sign in, basically you're getting an overview of Mint and basically the different accounts that the students have. So you see the different accounts. You have cash accounts, your checking, your savings accounts. You see your My Credit Card. Again, everything is connected through the Bank of Intuit, so this isn't any real information. It's everything that's kind of fictional on our end. You have an auto loan and a school loan. You have the ability to monitor transactions, kind of everything ranging from income to the grocery store to going to the dry cleaner. You can track a credit score. Again, this isn't real. This is another simulated account through TransUnion, bills, budgets, and so on and so forth. So now, how does that relate exactly to the simulation? Let me go ahead and pull one of them up for you. So this is the Introduction to Mint, the student section. So what also comes with this section is, for you guys as educators, is a teacher section. And I can actually pull this up really quickly. Let's see, Introduction to Mint, just so you guys can see what this looks like. The teacher section. Perfect. So this is what you guys will see beforehand. It's the simulation overview and objectives. And if you want to watch a video to kind of help you along the process, we have those available on YouTube for you or for the students to watch. We have a Take Charge Today lesson connection. So after going through the introductory activity, this is where you can go through and actually look at some of the simulations you can go through. And if this was budgeting, for example, we show where it aligns to Jumpstart's national standards, to CEE, and I believe NBEA as well. And we will talk about what students go through and then the materials needed to go through this simulation. So now flipping back really quickly to the student simulation, we give them a high-level overview. So in today's activity, this is what you're going to be doing. We give them a scenario. So Scott is the 24-year-old who graduated from college. And as they go through this simulation, it remains the same every time. This way, they're not jumping from like one person to the next, and this really is kind of like a stackable simulation or activity. We give them directions. And then last but not least, you have the actual worksheet itself to go through. So now taking a look at the worksheet on the left and what Mint looks like on the right. And if you guys have questions, feel free to, if you want to put some of them, I don't know if it's exactly Q&A or in chat. And then Lisa, if you want to read some to me as I kind of have a natural pause, please feel free, just because I know there's going to be a lot of questions and I don't kind of want them to be pushed just until the end because there'll be a lot to look at. So when you think about part one, so what we're going to do is we're going to take you through a quick demo of what Mint does, and this is for the students as well, before we go super specific into budgeting or super specific into credit scores or some of the other sections. So we just asked the students, what are the different types of accounts that you have? So now looking at the cash accounts, the account names, so we have My Checking and My Savings, and then what are those balances? You have your credit account, so credit cards, and then you have your loans, so auto loan and school loan. So now kind of going and looking through this, so scrolling down to the right, there's a line paragraph about Scott's spending. Okay, so let's look to the right about spending. Okay, how much has Scott spent so far this month? Great. Okay, so again, this is just high level and it goes into more depth later on, but so now thinking about transactions, let's go ahead and click on transactions. What are the 3 most recent transactions that he has? And these range day to day. So anytime you go ahead and so for example, if you come in here tomorrow, you might see a February 25th transaction. And there isn't a new transaction on every day, so if you don't see something, don't be worried. And then they just go ahead and write the most recent transactions. And then we have them actually search for like a specific transaction. So what does Scott pay each month for his auto loan? So you can kind of scroll down and you see, oh, on the 16th, Four Wheels auto loan, he pays $280. Next, so I'm just going to kind of keep scrolling. So part 3, we have credit scores. So what is Scott's credit score? Okay, that one's pretty obvious. And then what is his ranking based on kind of the graphs? So we see 640 and we see credit score is fair. Now scrolling over into budgets. Mint will actually, this typically wouldn't be here, but because this is kind of my demo account, these are already pre-populated. But what it does is the students have the ability to go ahead and so they will analyze Scott's spending habits, everything from transactions to trends. And so they can see where in the categories Scott is spending per month. So how much does he spend on rent? How much does he spend on his car? How much is he spending on education, maybe health and fitness? And you get to kind of really dial into and understand where he's spending his money, and just not from like an aggregate. Oh, he's spending here. If I do over time, you'll be able to see the aggregate, but this doesn't really help the students understand where he's spending his money. So when you look at category, you can see actually where he's spending his money. One thing that we wanted to showcase, because students often have this nowadays, is they have what we call side hustles. And you might see a check for income for $300. So outside of his job from iMusic LLC, he does random maybe dog walking or kind of other various side jobs. So now I kind of showed you, I'll pause for a second, I hear someone.
Yes, Jared, this is Lisa. We have a great question from one of our attendees, Michael, and he is asking, can students do their own simulated Mint, or do they learn from the samples only? And I know Tiffany was starting to answer that question, but I'll go ahead and let you address that a little bit as well.
Yeah, so it's a great question. We currently, so the simulations that you see on the left-hand side are specific to the, they're really specific to the fictional data. Could they use it for their own personal? Yes, but it might not necessarily always align. And we also want to make sure like student data privacy is our number one concern. And so that's why we, when we use the guides and the how-to guides, and then they connect to the Bank of Intuit, that's how we understand that they are students. And so when a student would come in here, he might not have 2 cash accounts. He might not have a credit. He might have 2 loans. So the simulations and the activities might not align to a student account. But one thing, and actually I just finished a research study this weekend where a lot of the times we learned that students will go through something like this and then they actually want to fix their own kind of personal finances, or they want to create a budget for themselves. They have part-time jobs in high school, or if they're university students, they want to help create a budget to make sure that they can actually make it through school with their loans. So it's not to say that it doesn't work, it's just not really aligned to personal versus the simulation accounts.
Thanks, Jared. I think that is probably going to help Michael better understand why we've set it up in this walled garden type of playroom for students to go in and get a good feel for how this hands-on technology can be put into their own lives outside of the classroom.
Awesome. And then so the last thing I will kind of quickly highlight here is you can add bills. So you can add, these are not real bills. So car payment, rent, tuition. I went through budgets. You can set goals for yourself. So that's part of it. If you want to pay off a credit card, buy a car, save for a down payment, take a trip, those are other options. And the last thing, which is actually what we kind of are finding most popular, is if you think about back to when you turned 18 and you probably got, you went from, man, I wish I got more mail to myself, to as soon as 18 hit, you got more credit card offers than you know what to do with, and you probably just signed up for the first one you got. I know that was my experience. A lot of educators love this simulation around comparing credit cards because it really shows students the difference in cards, and to not just take what's the first one out there that you might think is best for you. Or sorry, the first one out there that might not be the best for you, ranging from depending on someone if I want travel or if a student would rather have cash back or it's a student card. So that's kind of what this allows you to do. And you can also go and do the same thing through real savings accounts. So you can see that from a Discover online savings account, you might get 1.6% APY when if you go to like a brick and mortar Chase, it's like 0.01%. And so you can see all the details about all the different types of accounts. So I will go ahead and stop for 1 second on Mint, and then I'm going to go ahead and actually shift over to TurboTax and then show you guys kind of what that looks like. So any questions really quickly that are kind of coming up in the chat, Lisa?
No, but I was thinking exactly along the lines of Hillary when she shared her thoughts in chat, and she said she loves the scenarios. They're a great way to scaffold learning for students. So yes, using our Take Charge Today lesson plan where they get the tried and true and theory behind use of credit and other things, and then being able to take that knowledge and put it into action by using some of your programs and applications. So a great way to scaffold a lesson. You're right, Hillary. I think we're ready for a TurboTax now.
Awesome. So very similar to Mint, this is a safe walled off environment for students where anything entered into the tool, nothing leaves, and then everything gets wiped out. And so these are basically test accounts that students are doing to understand the process and actually see what it's like to file taxes. So you'll notice it's very similar. Like if any of you actually use TurboTax, you'll notice that it's very similar. Some things have been changed because it's a student version. But for the most part, it does a lot of the same things that you and I might do if you use the tool. So you'll come in and you'll do like a fake kind of account. You'll create a fake account. You'll sign in. Oops, I'm going to skip this. Continue to TurboTax. And so on the left-hand side, you will notice that, again, very similar to Mint, you have a checklist that once you kind of go through this checklist, oops. Can you guys see the screen okay? I minimize it just so you can kind of see the whole thing. Is it too small?
No, it looks great.
Okay, perfect. I will go ahead. I'll make this a little bit bigger. So again, checklist for you to go ahead and actually create and understand how to go through that account. Then you have a step-by-step guide, very similar. So signing in, enter your passwords, your numbers, the whole 9 yards, all the way through the process up until the very end when you can either download the fictional return or you can print it depending on how you want the students to kind of either have a discussion about this, turn it in for homework, or whatever kind of that is. So now looking at, on the left-hand side, I have a simulated W-2. So we give a upfront kind of paragraph about a fictional character. So Shanice is a 26-year-old working full-time, living in Nevada. She worked part-time for Tektronix and also got a job at Ormat Technologies. And so depending on the W-2 that you download from Take Charge's site, it will ask the students to do various things. So the reason why we do it this way is you'll see, okay, so she had 2 jobs. That means 2 W-2s. So Shanice lives with her uncle to save money, but is officially independent for tax purposes. She's single and has no job. Her birthday is November 4, 1993. Her social security number is listed below. Again, these are fictional numbers, and anything that gets entered into the tool doesn't leave, and it gets wiped. So whenever it gets done, then if you think they're clicking that process, like to file taxes, they're not actually doing that. And again, you'll see both W-2s listed below. And one question that comes up all the time is we know that taxes just went through a big revamp. Everything in the tool is actually 100% up to date to all tax standards. So that's one thing you won't have to worry about. So now kind of looking at the W-2 on the left and then seeing the simulation on the right, we're going to go ahead and we mention file for 0. And so now we're just going to actually go through and, okay, use the simulation on the left or the W-2 to start filing taxes. I'm going to skip this part just for now, just because we won't be able to get through the full thing. So first name, right? So we have Shanice Summers, just like it lists on the W-2 in box E. And we see that her date of birth is 11/04/1993, and her zip code is in Reno 89508. I'm going to go ahead and click continue. How did you file your taxes last year? Well, let's see. So in the past, she had somebody do her taxes for her. So let's see. So I had, we can just do, we'll do tax services. How do you feel about taxes? Not so good, just like everyone else. Okay, so let's talk about our life. In the paragraph, it mentions I'm single. What else? Do I have children or dependents? No, I'm not a college student. I don't own a home. And I also live with my uncle to save rent, so I don't pay rent. I'm going to click continue. Okay, so let's get an idea of your financial picture. Do I have college expenses? No, I had a job. Don't have childcare. I don't own any of these. And if students want to, they like to usually click into some of these things. A big one they like to see is I traded cryptocurrency, as that's kind of relevant and a big topic today. I'll go ahead and click continue. Great, so it looks like this is some of the information that we have to start. Let's keep going. And so now we're going to go a little bit further in depth. And one thing that students as well as us, when we go through this, we love to learn and kind of watch is this green number up here, hopefully. We actually have one W-2 where the individual messed up the W-4, and they actually owe a lot of money to the government. So kind of showing the variation. So now we're just going to go through a little bit more personal information. What is a social security number? Again, this is listed on the W-2 to my left. My occupation is, let's see, she's working as a program coordinator. Program coordinator, perfect. And then you will notice there are some questions here that we don't, because we can't list all of them, that are kind of odds but needed for tax purposes. Am I a member or former member of the U.S. Armed Forces? I am not. We don't specify. States, did I live in another state? Nope. Can someone else claim me? Nope. Remember, I'm officially independent. I was not considered blind, and nobody is preparing this return because I passed away. So one thing that we want to mention to the students is when they do these simulations, whether it's TurboTax or Mint, that they are stepping into the shoes of somebody else. So they are Shanice for the sake of this activity. We'll go ahead and click continue. Do you support other children? No, I do not. Great, so if I go ahead and start entering the address, it's 5660 Southwest 180th Avenue, Reno, Nevada, and great. Let's click continue. Okay, perfect. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and skip ahead really quickly just so we can get to the fun stuff. All right, and now this is where we start to get to go through the actual box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. So let's get started. We'll go through wages and income, deductions and credits, other taxes, and then once we go through and finish the federal review, depending on your state, there is a state section as well. So let's go ahead. I will click on work on my W-2s now. I'm going to just go ahead and just do a couple because we only have 15 minutes left. So my employer EID, so box B, is right here. So I see 71-623-1970. And if Lisa or Hillary, if you guys want to read out some questions as I go through this, both at the same time.
Okay. Another question that's come in regarding TurboTax. So it looks like I can create my own W-2 simulations to run my students through. Jared, is that correct?
That is correct. So if, for example, if you live in a state that we do not have a W-2 for, or you want to create your own, you are more than welcome to create your own W-2. You do not have to use any of the examples. It will work with any and everything you can do. So if you want somebody to be, 60 years old and they're thinking about retirement and they need to go through investments and have a mortgage and it's a little bit more complicated, that will work as well.
Michael is very happy with that answer, and he really appreciates that.
Awesome. So now you guys will see, so we just entered our employer's information, and now we have income and taxes. So this is where a lot of educators are like, well, I think pen and paper is important because I want students to understand what wages, tips, compensations, the federal tax. It's doing the same thing, but in technology versus writing it down. So what they're doing is they're going through and actually saying, okay, so box 1. And remember, this accompanies the PowerPoint from Take Charge Today. So it might not necessarily say, well, what are wages, the exact definition. They will be getting that as part of the Take Charge Today lesson. But then one thing that comes up at the end is you can, for example, when this number turns to a nice positive green number, you can click on and say, help me understand why I'm getting a return. And so those are some of the reflection questions that you can ask. Or when the students have different returns, that's where they have the ability to discuss in class, maybe what did one do versus somebody else? Why did somebody else get a return and somebody else did not? So here we see box 7, Social Security tips. It's blank, so we're just going to leave it blank just like we would do when we're filing taxes. All right, this is going to be the last 2 boxes that I'm going to do. So you'll notice I don't have state income tax because I'm in Nevada. Click continue, and voila. Your federal refund so far is $11.84. And then when students see this, a lot of times they go back and then try to make it so they get more, and so on and so forth. But if I want to understand why, you can go ahead and click, you made this amount of money. This is how much was taken out, so this is why you're getting this back. And then you get to move on to deductions and credits. And again, if we were doing something outside Nevada, we would have a state return as well. So I will pause there. I'll see if anybody has any other questions. This way I can kind of go back and forth and show you the tools, and then I will go ahead and turn it over to Lisa and Hillary to kind of wrap us up.
All right, we have, let me see here. Do we have a question? Someone is making a reflection statement. They say they're really excited and looking forward to incorporating this into their accounting class. And I think students will really enjoy it. I couldn't agree more. And then another comment, since I live in Nevada, this is what you said, Jared, since I live in Nevada and don't have income tax, Michael says he wants to move to Nevada. No, I'm kidding. He says this has him wanting to research how Nevada pays for their government. So that's an excellent extension activity for having them do that, and a great discussion that students could have.
One other call out really quickly as well is we do webinars because we mixed Mint and TurboTax together. You kind of got more of an overview. On Take Charge's website, we have recorded webinars where we go really in depth into filing taxes or into the specific Mint simulations that you guys have the ability to watch on their site.
That's exactly right. And that is easily found under our website of Take Charge Today under professional development. And it's there recorded for you if you wanted to watch Jared take you a little bit more in depth through a TurboTax activity or a Mint activity. Let's see, Jared, we have someone asking, Fred is asking, what platforms can students use with these simulations? A web browser, a smartphone, iPads?
Great question. So I would highly recommend either tablets or a computer, and Chrome typically tends to work best. Just because I'm not 100% sure how the security in your school works. I know it's kind of, I've heard from others that like Firefox or Safari doesn't work, and then they switch to Chrome and it's worked fine. So if I had a recommendation, it would be Chrome, and it would be to use a computer, but it does work on a tablet as well, or if you have a Chromebook. I would highly recommend not doing this on a cell phone. So I know that's one question that has come up kind of pretty often is students love to use their phones in school, so can they do this in the classroom? I would shy away, because if you go to mint.com on their phone, it kind of distorts what it really looks like, and it makes it a little bit more difficult.
I just did see another question come through, may have already been addressed, and I'm not sure that we actually explicitly said this, but both of these are free for educators to use, correct?
That is
Correct.
correct,
They are
yes.
free, and they will always be free.
Wonderful, wonderful. And
Yes, you have access to all the Take Charge Today lessons. They're all free, and all of the simulations that we've partnered with Intuit Education are free. So we really are excited that we're able to bring these to your students in your classroom.
yeah, I think these are wonderful. And, to one of the educators' comments earlier about, comparing another state, wouldn't be interesting maybe to, if you wanted to even expand upon some of these, maybe, break students into groups and assign students to different states, take a look at, if you use the same exact forms, how their taxes might end up differently depending on what state they're in, right? If you wanted to do some type of a comparison along those lines, it really lends itself to all sorts of different ways that you can use this, customizing the W-2s, using the ones that are provided, what have you. I think really does provide a lot of opportunities for educators to use them in the classroom. And the timing this time of year, as all of us right now are looking April 15th, just a few flips of the calendar away. Great timing for you guys to be here with us today. So
Hillary, I think I'd like to share that how I used some of this in my own classroom.
Absolutely.
Finance. I know that with high stakes education and how teachers are evaluated, we had to show student learning growth and through student learning objectives and other things, to sit down with a principal. And I found the last several years how much I really relied on surveying my own students to see if they were even doing their taxes themselves, or having a parent do them, or having a parent tax provider do them. And you'd have a baseline for what their exposure was of getting familiar with taxes, or how it impacts their life. And then showing them the lesson from Take Charge, paying your income taxes. And then now you have this simulation, so you could really show to a principal the baseline of learning that your students had with a topic on Mint, with the Mint simulations like budgeting and credit cards and saving and credit scores, but then also showing them the hands-on learning evidence. So that might be something that a teacher who's listening and joining us today could help them in their own educator space with professional learning.
Thank you so much, Jared and Lisa, for joining us today, and to all of our participants on the line. We hope that you'll join us for future Making Sense Project webinars. Have a great day, and hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.